Good evening, everybody. David McCoy, Ochimo Properties, Real Estate Matters. We're switching topics tonight, and I'm going to do, I don't know how many, several videos over real estate investing. And these are going to be short. They're not going to be in depth. It's just simply going to kind of touch some of the high points of that. And tonight I thought we'd talk about tax liens. Some people have heard of this, some people have not, but and with real estate, there are property taxes. And those property taxes normally are sort of local taxes. And that tax money is used for the government to be able to fund its operations. So if you don't pay your tax, then what can happen is the government can put a lien against your property for that tax. And those liens are like some of the top liens you can have. There may be one or two others. I think maybe an IRS lien might be higher. But in general, a tax lien is the highest lien you can have against a property. And so what they do is, rather than them going around and knocking on your door and trying to force you, if you have property, you probably know this, generally the tax bills come out certain time of the year, and generally if you pay early you get a little discount. Then if you pay on time, then if you pay late, then they charge a late fee. And if you haven't paid after a certain period of time, then they put a lien against your property for that tax. And that means that that they have the possibility that they could potentially foreclose on the property in order to receive that tax. But the government isn't really wanting to do that. They just want the money so that they can operate. So what they then do is, it depends upon the locale. This will be different depending upon where you are, what your local laws are like. But in most places, about once a year, maybe twice a year, they will sell those tax liens. And then they take that money, that's the money that they end up using for the taxes for their government, and the people get to buy them. And different places do that differently. I have not personally done this, but my understanding is there's a pretty good demand for these tax liens. And so I believe they actually, in some places, go at an auction. And so they sell it to the highest bidder. Some places it may be done a little differently, but anyway, so they get the money, and then the government keeps that money, and they use that for their government funding. In the meantime, the person who bought that tax lien, they have that lien against that property. Now, again, these laws will vary from place to place, but in a lot of places, then with that tax lien, what that is there is a certain amount of interest that you can charge the owner of that property for those taxes. And it's usually a pretty high rate of interest, and it's set by law. Lots of times I've heard of 8%, and I think I've heard of 12% interest. And this is, so the reality of the situation is that the person may or may not pay you, but that interest does accrue, and it will be secured by the property. Now, a lot of places, what they'll do is, if you have bought a tax lien against a certain property, and the following year comes along, and that owner still has not paid the taxes, and they don't pay again, then a lot of places will let you have the first opportunity to buy that tax lien the second year, so that they're not distributing those liens against multiple people. Which makes sense, because if you're going to have the first position against the debt, you really want that to go to one person. You don't want there to be another person, because then your position is diluted somewhat. So I think most places will give that preference where you have the first opportunity to do that. Again, it would be the same rate of interest. It's usually a very high rate of interest, and that would accrue again. If after 2 years, and again, these laws will vary somewhat, but this is in generalities. After 2 years, if they have not paid the debt and you have those liens, you can foreclose against the property. Now, the way that works after that would be, that would depend. It depends somewhat on the laws. And if you foreclose against the property, I think most of the time what would happen is it would go to foreclosure court. And then the foreclosure court would sell the property, and then they would pay off the debts from the proceeds of that property. So you would be paid off the full amount of that debt plus interest, and you would be more or less the first person in line. As I said, I think federal tax liens may come before you, but other than that, you are normally number one. So even if there are people who have maybe their mechanics liens against the property, and they would be wanting to file as well, they would be wanting to get paid as well. But if the property did not bring enough money to pay off all the debt against it, it goes in order of the debt. And so being the first, you all are virtually guaranteed. Now, there are some situations where you might just be able to accept the property. In all honesty, I've heard of that happening. I've heard of people talking about it, and but I think honestly that's rare. I think more often than not what it does is it goes to foreclosure court and then you get paid. You might have an option to take the property, but you would in turn have to pay off the debts of the other people, I'm sure. So that's the way tax liens work. In order to do it, you have to investigate your local laws. You need to find out how the tax liens are done, and you need to check your local laws and see if they're in accordance. These, as I said, these are generalities. It will be a little bit different pretty much everywhere. It will be slightly different state laws, slightly different local laws. But they will have those auctions usually once a year. Lots of times you have to set your declaration of interest in being able to participate. Lots of times they require a lot of time. I think here locally they may want 3 months notice. So you have to know in advance when they're going to be so that you can hit these deadlines. But it can be a one way, you know, some people do this and it's a very high return. I mean, in today's market, when we're getting CDs at, you know, 1 or maybe 2% if you're lucky, to have a pretty much guaranteed rate of 8 to 12% is almost unheard of. So that's probably enough. As I said, these are general ideas. It will vary somewhat state to state and locality to locality, but that is how that works. So if you have questions about it, please give me a shout. I'd love to help you if I can. And if you found this to be a helpful video, I hope you will click like. If you know someone who might benefit from watching it, please share it. And also, if you'd like to see some of these upcoming, please hit subscribe. Thanks very much for watching. I hope everybody has a great evening tonight, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye.